Hello everybody, this is Thomas. I hope everybody's doing good. We are doing month 5 now on our Jubilee block of the month. So first thing that we are going to do is, as before, we're going to cut out, so you can follow these instructions on page 15. We are going to take our background fabric, and on this one the background fabric is going to be the dark blue. Previously I've done the white. I'm going to use the stripology ruler for this here. We are going to cut 3 strips. The first strip is 4 inches wide. The next one is 2 inches wide. So on the stripology ruler, I'm going to cut the next one at 6. And then we're going to cut another strip at 3.5. So that will be at 9.5. Now I'm going to take my 4.5 inch strip, and I'm going to cut 4 squares that are 4 by 4. And this is double layered, so there's 2 and then 4. Now I need a total of 8 2-inch squares by 3.5. So I cut that last one in 8, plus 3.5 is 1, 2, 3.5, 11.5. So then we got 15, and that gives me a total of 2, 4, 6, 8. And we just need 8 of those, so we can pull that out. So these two here, they were 4 inches wide, so we're going to cut them down 4 inches wide by 3.5. I'm going to cut these down the center to make them 2 inches by 3.5. So I'm just going to line that up here at the 0 mark, and it lines up at the 4, cut down there. So I now have 8 2 inches by 3.5 inch rectangles. We are going to take our next strip, which is the 2-inch strip, and we're going to cut 4 2-inch by 9.5. So 4 strips that are 2 inches by 9.5, 0, 9.5, and 19. Then we're going to take our next strip that we need 2 of them that are 3.5 by 12.5 and 12.5. So that is our background pieces. Next one, we are going to take our L2 piece here. All right, we're going to cut 2 strips off of this that are 2 inches wide. So 2 strips that are 2 inches wide. Then when these strips, we're going to subcut this down to rectangles that are 2 inches by 3.5 inches, and we need a total of 8 of those. Now after that, we need a total of 16 squares that are 2 inches in diameter. So there's 2, 4, so we had 6, we need 16. So we have 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Thank goodness I went to school. I can now count. Okay, next we are going to take our M3 fabric, and this one we're going to cut this a strip at 5 inches. So because of the way the camera is in positioning, I'm going to position this in the center. There's 5, and so now we're going to cut this one down to a 5-inch strip. After we cut this down to a 5-inch strip, we are going to subcut this. We need 4 4-inch squares, and then after we do the 4 4-inch squares, the remainder of this piece needs to be put in month 11. So I'm going to take this, remember this is 5 inches wide. I'm going to cut it at 4. So now I have my 4. I have 4 cuts. This goes into month 11. So I'm marking this so that we know it goes into month 11. Now we have these 2. They were 5 inches wide and 5 by 4. So I'm going to stack them on top of each other. We're going to cut them down to 4 by 4 squares. Next, we are going to take our D4 fabric. We're going to subcut 12 2-inch squares from the 2-inch by 26-inch strip that we've got from month 2, strip remainder. And then we're going to cut a 2.5-inch strip out of this width of fabric and cut 12 more 2-inch squares. And then we're going to save the remainder of that 2.5-inch strip for month 11 also. So we're going to take this, cut it at 2.5. The remainder that we had from month 2, we should have gotten 12 2-inch squares. So this one, we need an additional 12 2-inch squares. And then we save the remainder. Save this remainder and put it in month 11. So on D4, we should have a total of 24 2.5-inch squares. All right, everybody. Now that we have finished cutting out our fabric, we're going to start putting our blocks together. Now we are going to go and we're going to grab our D4 and our L2. So we're going to have L2 right side up. We are going to take D4 and we are going to mark a line down the center on the wrong side of fabric. And now that I have marked that line, I'm going to place right sides together and we are going to sew on the line directly. When you start sewing, it is best to start sewing from this side down to this side. So your line is going from bottom left to top right, but we want to sew from top right to bottom left across here because you're less likely to have it caught in the machine. After we have sewn it together, we get this here, and we want to cut a 1/4 inch away from the sewn line. So I'm going to line my ruler up. I'm going to cut that 1/4 inch. Now you can either press this open or you could press it to one side. I preferred to press it open, but you could do it either way. We've got this here, and you can see here on the back side where I've pressed it open. I'm going to do the same thing with the D4. I'm going to draw a line. This time I'm going to have the line going from, I am going to place right sides together again. We're going to sew from top, your line goes from top left to bottom right, and we want to sew from top left here and sew down on the line. After we've sewn on the line, we do the same thing again. We're going to place the ruler and we're going to cut a 1/4 inch away from our sewn line. And I did come in again and pressed my seam open. Okay, now you're going to finish that with all the other L2s and D4s. And, well, the L2s that are 2 by 3.5. Now we're going to go to our one that we're going to take our background rectangle, put it right side up. We are going to take, so we're doing the exact same method on this one. So we're going to draw a line on our L2 square on the wrong side. We're going to place this on top of the rectangle, and we want our line going from top right to bottom left. We're going to start sewing here and sew down to here, and it's the exact same method that we had done on that one. We're going to come in, cut a 1/4 inch away. We're going to press the seam open. And after we press the seam open, we're going to take our other rectangle, put right sides together, and we're going to have our line going from top left to bottom right. We're going to start sewing at the top left here and sew down. And we're going to press that seam open. And we're going to take our 2 flying geese. So here's the first set that we did that was L2, D4, and then background and L2. We're going to place it together like this. We're going to flip this over, and and this is a good example of where I've pressed the seam open. I'm going to line this up, and when I sew this together, I'm going to kind of fold this back and make sure my lines are matching up so that my point matches up. And after we've done that, then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch crossed, and I press the seam open. So this is what your square will look like. That is going to be the 2 flying geese sewn together to get your square. Next, we are going to take our background fabric, and we're going to take our M3 fabric. We're going to place background fabric. The M3 fabric, we're going to draw our line down the center here, like what we did before. We're going to draw, then we're going to take this, and we're going to place right sides together. So background fabric is right side up. M3 is going to be right side down, and I have a drawn line here. I want to sew 1/4 inch on each side of the lines, and the pattern calls for a scant, so either do a scant or just kind of have your foot a little bit over the line a little bit to get your scant 1/4 inch. After we've sewn on both sides, we are now going to take our ruler and we're going to cut on our drawn line. And then we're going to come in and we're going to press this seam open. After we've pressed the seam open, we've got to square this up. Now this needs to be squared up to 3.5 by 3.5. So we are going to take our Creative Grids square ruler. We want a square ruler on this because we get this nice 45-degree angle going down. I'm going to place the 45-degree angle on top of my sewn line, the seam, and we are going to adjust the ruler so that I have a little bit of fabric outside the ruler here, outside the ruler here, and then my 3.5 line goes along here, and I have fabric around all sides. So now I'm going to come in, trim, turn the square, and then I'm going to line this up at the 3.5 by 3.5 inch line. My 45-degree line should line up with my seam line, and then we are going to trim the other two sides. If you have a rotating mat, that is helpful in this situation. So you're going to square up all those blocks. After you've squared them up, you are going to take that piece and you're going to set it there. You're going to take your D4 square. You're going to draw a line down the center. After you draw the line down the center, you're going to place the square on here, and your line should be going across this way. We don't want to go up and down. We want to go horizontal like this, following our seam line. We're going to come in, and we're going to sew directly on this line here. And after we've sewn on that, this is what it will look like. We're going to come in and cut a 1/4 inch away from our sewn line. And at this point, you can either press the seam open or press it up. As everybody knows, I went ahead and pressed the seam open on this one. Next, we are going to go to the block layout. We are going to lay out our block. So, the easiest way to remember the block, background goes to the outside. So I'm going to place my squares here. This is my center one, so this is my 4-patch kaleidoscope. Notice yellow is my background, so my background's going to the outside. So all my background will be on the outside of the block, and we're going to place the block. Let's kind of space that out so you can see the individual blocks. We're going to take this piece, sew it to this piece, sew it to this piece, sew it to this. Now, I do not have any lines that needed to be lined up except for when I sew that. If we see here where I have my two background pieces that are yellow, I want to make sure that that diagonal line lines up with that one, and then we'll pin there. And so that is the point that I need to make sure that I get. And then this bottom one, same thing. The background pieces have the diagonal, kind of pull them back, make sure that they line up. And then that's what those are the blocks that do need to be lined up. So after I get them done, my block will now look like this. And then we're going to sew this piece to this piece, this one to this one, this one to this one. Now on this one, same thing. I want to line up that diagonal where my background piece is there. Make sure that lines up on the block. And then also here at the bottom one, make sure that the background pieces line up with that diagonal line. And then you will have a row like this. And then we're going to sew the rows together. So I've sewn this bottom piece to this one. So you're going to sew the bottom to the middle. And then we're going to sew the top to the middle. And you can see here where I have pressed seams open. The lines that we need to line up on this row is, again, I'm going to pull this back, and on this piece, this is my background. I'm going to make sure my background lines line up here, and I'm going to pin. The next point that needs to be lined up is the center of the block piece there. You want to make sure the seam lines line up, and then this seam line here, and then when we get to the edge, your diagonal for your background. So you want to make sure those line up, and you're going to pin those there when you sew it together. Your finished block will look like this. Isn't that so cute? I love it. Love it, love it, love it. And I got like these little tufts in the center there. It's so cute. Now, we're going to take this piece. We're going to put our background strip on page 15. We're going to take this strip that's to each side of the block. After we sew those together, we're going to take the 3.5 inch strip, put it on the top, and sew that to that. And now your month 5 is done. I hope everybody is enjoying this one. The next one is going to be month 6. That means we're halfway through. Oh, yay, I'm so excited. Well, everybody, you take care. I will, if you have any questions, don't forget to call. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. All right. Have a great day, and I will see you next month. All right, bye.